Hello, it's Yellow, and welcome back to my channel. Now, it has been raining non-stop where I live, and that reminded me of a pretty stupid experience that I had while at school camp a few years ago, so let's get right into it. We had this school camp trip in late October, somewhere deep in the mountains where the trees looked black at night and the air smelled wet all the time. It was supposed to be one of those team bonding things our school forced on us every fucking year. 3 days in the cabin, hiking trails, campfires, stupid trust exercises, and teachers pretending they were chill because we were technically outside school grounds. At first, it was actually pretty fun, no parents, barely any signal, everybody acting louder and dumber than usual because nobody could post anything anyway. There were like 30 of us split into cabins, and the place itself looked straight out of a horror movie, I'm not gonna lie. Old wooden buildings, fog hanging between the trees every morning, trails disappearing into thick forest after like 50 meters, and even during the day, the woods looked dark. The rangers running the camp were actually cool though. They were these older outdoorsy guys who knew everything about the forest. One of them could literally look at the broken branches and somehow know which direction a deer moved in. Now, they kept warning us not to leave the marked trails because the forest stretched for kilometers or miles, however you want it, and people underestimated it all the time. Obviously, that warning immediately sounded like a challenge to have the guys there, including me. The second night was when everything went wrong. Me and my friend, who we're gonna call Lucas, had brought weed with us hidden inside a vitamin container because we thought we were geniuses. And it wasn't even a lot, just enough for a couple of joints. Now we have history with smoking, we'd smoke before like plenty of times, mostly in parks or behind garages, but doing it at camp felt exciting because it was risky. The teachers always did like cabin checks earlier that evening, so once it got dark, we figured out we were safe. And the campfire had ended around 10. Everybody was either hanging around like outside or in the back in the cabins playing cards and just messing around. The woods beyond the firelight looked completely dead. No lights, no sounds, except wind moving branches around. Lucas looked at me and he was like, now? And honestly, that was the entire decision-making process. We grabbed hoodies, slipped away behind the cabins, and followed this narrow trail leading into the trees. We didn't want anyone smelling it near camp, so we kept walking further and further than we probably should have. And at first it felt funny more than dangerous. We were laughing at nothing, trying not to trip over roots, using our phone flashlights for a few seconds at a time because we didn't want to get caught. And after maybe 10 minutes, we found this clearing with fallen logs around it. Oh, it felt hidden enough, it felt perfect, you couldn't see the camp anymore, just darkness between trees. And we sat down and lit up. At first, everything was completely normal. Cold air, smoke hanging in front of us, distant sounds from camp barely reaching through the forest, and we were talking about random stuff, school, girls, teachers we hated, the usual stupid conversations that feel insanely deep when you're high. But then the atmosphere started like changing. I don't know if it was because we smoked too much too fast or because the forest was already creepy, but suddenly I became hyper aware of everything around us. Every crack of a branch sounded massive. The wind started sounding like whispers. My heart felt loud enough for someone else to hear. Lucas noticed it too. We both got quiet at the same time. Then we heard something move deeper in the woods. Not a tiny noise either. Heavy fucking movement, like something stepping through leaves. We froze instantly. We thought it was a bear. We thought it was a wolf. We don't know. And for a few seconds, we just stared into the dark trees with that horrible feeling where your brain starts inventing things. I remember my mouth going completely dry. The flashlight on my phone suddenly felt useless as fuck because it only lit up tiny pieces of the forest while everything beyond it stayed pitch black. And then we heard another crack. Closer. And then Lucas muttered, "Nah, fuck this." We both looked at each other, we stood up immediately, and this is where we made the real mistake. Instead of calmly following the trail back, we started walking fast in what we thought was the right direction. But when you're high and paranoid in the dark, every tree looks the same. Every path suddenly splits into 10 others. We kept quietly arguing about which way camp was, both pretending we knew. After maybe 5 minutes, I realized something horrible. We couldn't hear the camp anymore. No voices, no music, nothing. Just forest. The silence hit me so hard, I think my brain did a 360, I'm not even gonna lie. We stopped walking, I spun around with my flashlight, and all I saw were endless trees. The beam barely reached through the fog starting to form between them. Everything looked wet and disordered. I whispered to myself, but Lucas also heard me. I think we're lost. Lucas, God bless his soul, tried acting calm, but I could hear panic in his voice now. He kept saying we just needed to keep moving downhill because camp was probably lower, but every direction looked downhill. Then we heard another sound behind us. Fast movement. We both turned instantly, and the flashlight caught nothing except branches shaking slightly. At that point, I was dead. I started imagining animals everywhere. Bears, wolves, some random psycho living in the woods. Every shadow looked human for half a second. That fucking weed made everything feel stretched out and unreal. My thoughts kept looping over themselves. What if we wandered farther away? What if nobody noticed we were gone until morning? What if our phones died? And then I checked my phone. 14%. Amazing. We kept moving, trying not to freak out, but the woods started feeling endless. Sometimes we think we found a trail, but then it disappeared into bushes. Other times we'd see reflective shapes between trees that turned out to be wet leaves. I stumbled over roots constantly because my legs felt disconnected from my brain. The worst part was how dark it became once we stopped using flashlights continuously. You don't realize how black forests actually are until you're standing in one at night. The darkness felt physical, like the trees themselves were swallowing the light. Then Lucas suddenly grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. He whispered, "There's someone there." And about 20 meters away, between the trees, I saw a tall shape standing completely still. My entire body went cold. Neither of us moved. I could hear my own breathing getting shaky. The figure didn't move either. It just stood there. And then the flashlight flickered slightly and I realized it was a broken tree trunk. That somehow made things worse because it proved how badly our brains were screwing with us. After another 20 minutes, we were fully panicking. We started shouting occasionally, but the forest absorbed the sound weirdly. Nothing came back to us except echoes. At one point, I genuinely thought I heard whispering nearby and nearly started running. And then came the moment I'll never forget. I will always cherish this moment because somewhere off in the distance we heard a whistle. Sharp, loud, human whistle. We both froze, and then another whistle answered from further away. At first I thought I was imagining it, then flashlights appeared moving through the trees in the distance. Real flashlights, not ours. And suddenly somebody shouted our names. Oh, the relief hit so hard I almost cried. We started yelling back immediately, crashing through bushes toward the lights like idiots. Within minutes, two rangers found us. One of them looked annoyed as hell, and the other looked honestly concerned. Apparently, the teachers noticed we disappeared during cabin checks, and the rangers started searching almost immediately because they knew how dangerous it was for teenagers to wander around there at night. One ranger asked if we'd been drinking. We both said no way too quickly. I remember trying to act normal while absolutely blasted out of my mind. Probably the least convincing performance of my life. My heart was still pounding from panic, and the ranger kept shining his flashlight directly at our faces while asking where we went. The walk back felt surreal. The rangers moved through the forest like they had GPSs in their brains. They barely even looked around. Meanwhile, me and Lucas had apparently managed to circle away from camp in the dumbest direction possible. The ranger told us another hour deeper and we could have ended up near rough terrain where people actually got injured before. That sentence sobered me up more than anything. When we finally saw the camp lights through the trees, I swear it looked like civilization after the apocalypse. The teachers were furious, obviously. We got separated, questioned, lectured, threatened with calls home, all of it. But underneath the anger, they also looked relieved. One teacher admitted they were getting seriously worried because temperatures dropped hard at night there. Nobody ever officially proved we smoke weed, though I'm pretty sure every adult knew. The Rangers definitely knew. One of them just looked at me with this exhausted expression like he'd seen this exact situation happen 100 times before. Back in the cabin, nobody slept much because everyone wanted details. We exaggerated parts of the story immediately because that's what teenagers do, but honestly, the real experience was already terrifying enough. And the weird thing is, looking back now, the forest probably wasn't even the dangerous part. It was our own heads. The paranoia completely took over. Once fear mixed with being high, every tiny sound became a threat. Every shadow becomes something alive. We stopped thinking logically almost instantly. That's what scared me afterward, realizing how fast your brain can turn off against you in the wrong environment. To this day, I still remember the feeling of standing in those woods with dead foam battery, freezing air, and no idea where camp was. Just endless trees. And that horrible thought repeating in my head. We seriously fucked up. So guys, we have morals of the story, like usual. Please don't be like us. Being high can turn small problems into full-on panic mode. When fear kicks in, your brain starts creating threats that aren't even there, so please don't feed your fear. People who know nature, like rangers, deserve way more respect than anyone gives them. And that will be all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Touch some grass if you haven't. And as always, stay yellow.